so much for joining us. Today's webinar is Future Ready Enterprises, How Executives Can Lead with Integration, AI, and Automation. We are Spindustry, and we've been in the business for 25 plus years, and we provide several services. Today's webinar is extra exciting because we have a panel of experts from every part of the company, so you'll get to hear from all of them today, which is very exciting. After today's webinar, you'll receive a link to the recording and the slides that you see today. If you have any questions during today's amazing webinar, you can use the questions feature to ask those, and we'll answer them at the end if we have time. In case we aren't able to get to your questions, my contact information will be on the last slide of this slide deck, so please don't hesitate to reach out so we can get those answered for you. Besides today's webinar, we have lots of others that are free and easy to access. You can find those on spindustry.com/webinars. My name is Kelsey Culbertson, and I'll be your host for today, and I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves. So Katie, why don't you start?
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Price-Spear. I'm a senior marketing analyst here at Spindustry, and my focus is largely on sales enablement strategy, marketing automation and integration, as well as WordPress systems.
Awesome. Bird, I'll have you go next.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Bird, the CEO here at Spindustry, and I spend a lot of time as just an analyst and strategist with our clients, and I spend a lot of time with our marketing and our web development teams and kind of connecting dots between those to help businesses grow.
Awesome. Tavon, I'll toss it over to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am Tavon. I'm one of our SharePoint developers here at Spindustry, and I spend a lot of my time working with automating and integrating different systems.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Jared.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jared Edge. I'm the Director of SharePoint Services and Office 365 Services for Spindustry. My team handles all the different Office 365 and SharePoint pieces of the puzzle, and my team is amazing and awesome. So shout out to them for being so enthusiastic about what they do. So I'll just take us into kind of what we're going to discuss today. As we put together these webinars, we want to make sure they're relevant for the times, relevant for the people that we're talking to, or for the audience that we have. And so these are the things that we came up with this time. And this is kind of, you could think of it as a continuation off of the previous webinar that we did, actually the previous 2 webinars that we did. So you kind of think of it in a series. But today's discussion topics, which again, kudos for having like the entire Spindustry represented here today, which is amazing and a little bit different for the way we do our webinars. But this is going to be amazing for everybody, so just hang on to your seats. It's going to be awesome. So today's discussions, what we're going to talk about is first starting with how to unify your internal systems, websites, and data into a single intelligent ecosystem. And by that, what we really mean is just integrating systems together. What's the benefit of it, and how can it be done? Is it scary? Should we be doing it? Those are the kind of things we're going to tackle inside of here. Then we're going to talk about how AI can surface insights and automate decisions across your organization. AI always being one of those topics that's really, really high on everybody's list of things to be considering. And we're going to have a big conversation about that as well. Then we're going to discuss how automation reduces friction in the finance, HR, operations, and just other departments, and even with customer engagement as well. So how does that fit into the puzzle, and what should I be thinking right now about that topic, right? And then we're going to look at industry-specific examples to just bring some of our knowledge and the things that we've seen as we service the industry or several industries. We're going to just talk about some of our experiences and things that we've done for different clients. Then we're going to take a practical a look at a practical roadmap for modernizing your enterprise without disruption. Simply meaning, how do I do this change? And change can be kind of a roadblock, and then sometimes it can be just something that's really wanted or sought after. So we're going to have a conversation about that as well. We think that all these topics are, like I said, relevant to the audience that we have here today. I know that a lot of you are from the C-suite, and that is amazing. So we're happy to be having this conversation with you today, and let's just see how it all unfolds. So I'm going to just start us out by talking about some different things. So if you were in our last webinar, the topics that were kind of on the mind of CEOs and C-suite were really digital transformation, cybersecurity, data governance, and then talent acquisition, along with AI as well. And those are things that we talked about in that last webinar. We'll have a link to that webinar for you guys in case you weren't able to attend that first one. But in this one, we're going to continue some of that with things that are still at the top of mind for CEOs or C-suite, and that's going to involve things like AI solutions and agents. You can't even watch TV today without seeing a commercial come on for like agents, right? And then we're going to talk about marketing and SEO and how either AI or automation helps with those pieces of the puzzle, or even integrating the systems together. And then also intelligent automation as well, and then also integrated systems. And these are all things that are listed as being at top of mind. And where did we get all that information from? We did some research. In our last webinar, these were the stats that kind of went along with that last webinar. So I'll let you guys read those when you get this slide deck. You will get this slide deck sent to you. Okay, but this is more about what we're talking about today. So the AI, the automation, the integration piece of it, really take a look at some of these stats, right? So AI, 75 to 79% of CEOs rank AI in the top 3 strategic priority items that they have. That's amazing, right? And then automation, 65% of CFOs say that automating tasks is a strategic priority. Again, amazing. And I know we don't have to tell you, we're preaching to the choir here, but systems integration, 90% of CIOs prioritize consolidating all their systems together so that they can communicate. Not necessarily getting rid of a system or getting rid of a system and putting in another system, but just making the ones that you have now work together. That's an amazing thing to be able to do. So we're going to have conversations around a lot of this because that's the things that are on your mind. And so as we go through and I start talking to the panel, we'll have them each kind of give their insight into the different questions that we have today. So Kelsey, why don't you get us started off here?
Absolutely. So I think the first kind of subject we should talk to the panel about is how to unify your internal systems, websites, and data into a single intelligent ecosystem.
Outstanding. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Tavon here. And Tavon, what are some of the experiences that you've had with our clients as far as integrating systems that are not necessarily SharePoint into SharePoint or in the Azure environment and things like that? Go ahead and give us some insight there.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the cases that comes first to my mind when we're talking about integrating systems and tying completely disconnected apps together actually has to do with kind of a HR department and an IT department and the process of hiring new people and getting them set up to actually start doing their jobs, right? So many of you out there have different tools, whether it's something like ADP or Paycor or any other HRIS system that you might be familiar with, where we just have all of our kind of employees tracked, right? This is Tavon, this is his email address, this is his legal information. Well, part of the hiring process oftentimes is, okay, great, we went ahead and put Tavon into, say, ADP or Paycor. Now I'm going to need to go out to my IT department and say, hey, can you make an account for Tavon and give him this license? And can we go ahead and get him a laptop and give him all these tools that he's going to need to actually go out and do what we hired him for? Well, it's one of the things that we've been approached for several times is how do we take that process and make it not so manual or not something that we have to put as much of our people's effort into? Can we have a system say, okay, Tavon, I just put you into ADP or Paycor or our other HRIS system, have that automatically start the process of making an account, licensing it, setting your password default, notifying the manager who you're going to be working with, all these different pieces of the puzzle. And yes, we absolutely can. We've seen that be done really, really successfully. You also mentioned...
Go ahead, Tavon.
Sorry, go ahead. All right. You also mentioned a little bit ago the idea of kind of a single pane of glass. And that's another thing that I think you're going to hear come up time and time again while we work with companies that have different tools and different places their data lives, is I don't want to have to go out to 10 different systems every day. I want to go to one tool. I want to go to our tool and have it go out and actually put things where they belong or update our different databases and our different kind of disconnected systems. So that's another major thing that you'll see we tend to help different clients with.
So that's really cool stuff, Tavon. And I think to kind of bring some of that together and give everyone a visual of this, let's go ahead and do a demo here that shows that we could integrate SharePoint, which several of you have, or at least know about, but also with Copilot AI and doing maybe an agent in the middle of that, which some of you may know about, but maybe you haven't integrated yet because you don't fully understand what the reasoning is behind it, or you haven't really grasped use cases for it yet, and that's fine. And then also connecting that to the public website. right? Which is not a part of SharePoint, which is not a part of Copilot, which is not even a part, maybe not even a part of Microsoft, right? It may be WordPress technology, or it could be .NET technology. Let's see how that would work out. So I'm first going to go and kind of show us a list that we have inside of SharePoint. So if you're familiar with SharePoint, and you don't have to be for this webinar, but if you're familiar with SharePoint, I have this list where we're tracking some public training registration. So the idea here is someone can go to our public website, enter in some information, have a conversation with our AI, and then it'll sign them up for a class that we have inside of our system, which is really cool stuff. So I have that here, and this is the list, and we'll come back to this list to see if it actually worked. Then here, what I'm using is Copilot Studio to create an agent. And inside of here, we have an agent for this. I'm just going to refresh this and pull up that agent real quick. Here it comes. It's on its way. It's on its way. It's on its way. There we go. And I'm going to add this particular agent right here, just so you can see kind of inside what that would look like. And this is our training agent, and it's going to take care of the communication and all the process in the middle of the piece that allows our user to have an intelligent conversation with our website, right? And so then I'm going to go over and pull up our website so you can kind of get an idea of what that might look like as well. So here's our public website. Again, not SharePoint. This is a .NET website. Okay, not SharePoint, not sitting inside of our environment, but outside of our environment, but yet another system that we use. And I have clients that are coming here, they're looking at our trade shows, they're registering, and they say, hey, if you're running a class at the trade show, I'd like to be involved in that. Can you sign me up? And here they can go to our little chat that we have just sitting here. And this is now going to talk to the Copilot agent in the background. It is the Copilot agent. So I'm just going to ask it a simple question. What upcoming trainings are there? I'll just put that in here. And you'll see there's actually a prompt here that I could use to just do that as well. But I'll go ahead and ask it, and we'll see if it gives us back some information. There you go. It says, hey, there's a Power BI visualization class coming up on November 8th, and there's also the SharePoint for beginners. And then I'm going to tell it to go ahead and sign me up for the SharePoint. I'm just going to copy that prompt so I don't have to type it. And I'm going to give it my email address because that's what it's telling me to do. There we go. Flan Stimpleton. There we go. And we'll click go on that. And it's going to go out and do its work, but it's having an intelligent conversation with the person as they go through. It says, hey, you have been successfully registered for this, and then we're going to send them an email and all those different types of things. That is really cool. This is my external website, right? Public facing, and I'm talking to a very private piece of our organization, which is our SharePoint environment. And let me just jump back over to here and show inside of here. If we refresh this, we should have another entry in there. There it is. That's Flan Stimpleton right there. And he is registered now for the SharePoint for Beginners class. We just took multiple systems and connected them together. And we show that very simple example, which you may think it's complex, but it's a very simple example in order to be able to say these things are possible. And now that we have that in your mind, we can kind of continue our conversation. I just wanted you to know that I also put some slides in here, some screenshots of those, just so in case you have to have this conversation with someone else, you'll see those screenshots sitting inside of here for you, okay? All pieces of that. And so I'm gonna now turn it over to Bird and say, Bird, we just showed an example of SharePoint, Copilot, and WordPress or .NET, but certainly in your interactions and all the strategy that you do for clients, what else have you seen that either needs to be automated, that people aren't thinking about, or that you've integrated before?
Sure. I like to back up and ask the why question, right? And think about the audiences that are involved. And for most organizations and a lot of manufacturers that might be on today, you know, they have customers, they have employees, and then they have maybe dealers and distributors or some other middle person in this situation. And so how are we communicating with and connecting each of those audiences individually? How are we connecting them together? And how are we trying to, of course, then save money or make money for these organizations? And so using what you just talked about, internal systems, external systems, and automating processes, you can accomplish all that with those audiences and get them back to work.
Awesome. Okay, so Katie, what's your take on all of this?
So on the screen, there will be a graphic pop-up that will show two different types of tech stacks. On the left is what we're calling a disconnected tech stack, and on the right is a streamlined tech stack. On the left is a tech stack that might look similar to a lot of yours. You have tools for every department. You have Salesforce for sales information, you might have a marketing email platform. If you do events, you might have an event registration platform, your own website, and then other billing and invoicing systems. On this example, a lot of this stuff is disconnected and creating data silos to where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And a lot of it is manual processes where you're having to manually import and export data from one system to another, which also introduces human error. And so with automation, as we move to the right graphic, you can get a streamlined tech stack. This, of course, is a very simplified version of what a streamlined tech stack could look like. But the idea is that you have all of these different tools talking to each other into one single source of truth, so that your marketing data is going to inform your sales data is going to inform your finance team, and so on and so forth. And then all that data can congregate together so that you can really segment your audiences and really know how to target to them in your marketing messaging and other internal resources on how you're really pushing certain services or products.
So that is amazing. Thank you, panel, for that insight. I think now we have everybody primed for the conversations that we're going to have along the way. Thank you for all those really insightful examples. So Kelsey, why don't you take us into the next section?
Absolutely. So for the next section, we can talk about something that I know we're all super excited and passionate about, and that is how AI can surface insights and automate decisions across your organization. Jared, do you want to take that one over to the panel too?
I absolutely do. So I think we'll start out with Tavon and talk about maybe Power BI and how some of those insights come together.
All right, perfect. So many of you are, of course, familiar with Power BI, but for anyone not familiar, just think of it as kind of a great data insights and reporting tool that Microsoft made, and is one of the more popular services that they push. So Power BI, we think, is a really great tool for having AI come and try to give you some insights or some predictions about your data, because Power BI has baked in AI that's sitting there ready for you to have just a real, normal, natural conversation about your data, right? I don't have to be an expert on making a report in order to work with Power BI. I don't have to be even an expert in my own data. Just by having it in the platform, we can use the kind of baked in AI that it comes with to actually just say, oh, well, what are the trends that you're seeing in this data? Or what's some insight that you can give me? What should I be doing differently? What's going well for my business? And Power BI is going to do a great job of actually answering those questions for you. Again, without you having to be any sort of an expert in making a report, understanding everything about your data, or having any sort of real expertise and experience with Power BI itself. It's just sitting there ready to help you have that normal, natural language conversation with the tool and actually understand your data just that little bit better.
So that's awesome. And you know that I love Power BI. So anytime someone wants to talk about Power BI, I'm in. We can sit there and have a conversation. But now, Katie, could you kind of give us another perspective of how AI can help surface insights or how that help automate decisions across your organization?
So as you guys have probably noticed, that AI is changing even how Google search looks like. So with that, you might have shown up, your website might have shown up on the first 10 search results. Now, AI generated responses are taking up 50% of Google's first page results. And so even if you had really great SEO, best website in the world, you might now be on the second page because AI is taking up so much real estate. And with that kind of evolution and advancement of AI, it's also changing the way that people are starting to search for things. Where in the past, people might have just used maybe 1 to 5 keywords to search for, let's say, blue Nike shoes, size 7. And now they're starting to have full-blown conversations and questions with Google, but also search agents like ChatGPT, Copilot, and others that are on the market. And so what we have to really think about is, with your website, but also your other digital media sources like social media and things of that nature, is your marketing content answering the questions that people are starting to ask? And so really looking at your website as prime real estate to evolve and adapt as AI is adapting, to really make sure that, hey, is my website answering key questions about our services, about our products? And how can we adapt that so that we're still populating within search results, whether it be Google or Bing or other search engines, to really make sure that your content is getting in front of the right people as this technology evolves?
Katie, I honestly think that this is one of the most significant things going on today because it's right there in everybody's face. A change happened in the midst of it all, and we just adapted as end users, just adapted to the new way of thinking. And no one from the business side really said, oh, something's changed here. Should we do something about that, right? And so, Bird, I'm going to change it over to you, but I don't know how you're going to follow up what Katie just said, because that to me is one of the most significant changes that's happened in this year alone.
Yeah, no, it's often difficult to follow Katie. But yeah, no, she's 100% right that's super important. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I think also, once you use those new search tools to get people to your website, then like you guys have said before, you want to use AI to then automate processes, make sure the information on the website is up to date, make sure that how they interact, whether they're buying a product, signing up for registering for a course, whatever, is all happening a lot faster with AI tools. And yeah, back to what Katie was talking about with the search, it's something we certainly are helping people with today. You can scan websites, you can do an audit of how they're ranking in those new search engine tools and the generative search tools, and you can find out what questions people are asking. Like Katie said, what conversational phrase they're using instead of just talking about shoes. They're like, what are good shoes to use for running? Is very different than I've already decided on a brand and a size and all that stuff. So your websites are not necessarily built for answering those questions or being found when people search for those questions. And so there's different things we need to do today to make a website rank well in those kind of searches.
And I know that the examples that we gave kind of were like retail, if you will.
Sure.
But in reality, that's for everything, isn't it? So even if I'm a hospital and people are hitting my website or they're searching for different things, they're getting answers not just from my site, but from sites all over the world, right? That have the answer they're looking for, or that the AI thinks they're looking for, and AI is just giving that information to them. That's my mind is boggled by this whole concept. And that how the change happened all of a sudden overnight, and it was just there, right? Or seemingly overnight. So I think this is probably a topic that we probably should address even more. And I think this is one of the things that we've been pushing out to our clients as well. Are you aware of this and the how important it is there? So panel, thank you for bringing those things to light. I don't want to go to the next topic yet. I really think I want to talk a little bit more about AI, if that's okay with everybody. So let me just ask a different question here and see if you guys can give me your insight on it, right? I know just from working with the clients that I end up working with that sometimes they're on one side of the fence. They either, well, we turned on AI right away, or they're like, we don't know if we're ever going to turn on AI, right? And there is a middle ground, and there's a way to get to a sensible implementation of AI, and that involves governance. And if you've ever heard me say anything in any webinar, you know I'm putting the word governance in there somewhere. So that's there, right? But what I want to ask the panel is, what do we say to a company that is not yet accepted AI, or doesn't have a plan, or is not working on a plan for going into AI, right? Go ahead, and I'll start with Tavon.
All right. So it's unfortunate to say, but I think the big message that I would give to a company that isn't sure about AI and is kind of on the fence about whether it's something they should use is just look around you, right? Look at your competitors, look at what's going on with industries overall, look at the direction that technology is moving. If we're still not sure if we want to use AI, what we want to use it for, how we're going to embrace it as an organization, unfortunately, the reality is we're falling behind, right? You don't want to be not setting yourself and your company up for success by embracing new technology. So if we say, we're not sure about AI, or again, we're just not ready for it, we need to start working on that, because the rest of the world and the rest of the industry is pushing forward with it, and it's making their lives and their processes and their business so much more efficient. So you can't afford to leave yourself behind.
All right, Katie, weigh in.
I think for any company that's hesitant on AI, it doesn't have to be a huge jump. You don't have to connect your like internal systems to a language learning model, like some of the paid copilots or Claude or ChatGPT. You can start small by thinking about it more as what processes are really taking my team too much of their time to where they can't get to the big picture ideas. Like, where can we streamline things that are very manual that could easily be automated to save time?
Awesome. Bird, weigh in.
Yeah, well, you and I have been doing this a long time, Jared, and I think sometimes you have to look backwards to look forwards. And I think if companies look and said, what if we had never put up a website? What if we had never jumped on this, this trend of smartphones being a thing, or mobile, what if we'd never adapted to those technologies? We would certainly not want to be in that position today. And I think this is just the next step on that journey of something you want to look at, this digital transformation, and make sure that you're a part of it, like Tavon said, and you're going forward. And the pace at which AI is changing is maybe what makes it different than those other two examples I gave. Is I think it's just exponentially going faster and faster, and so we have to pay attention to it even more so than those other changes I mentioned.
Yeah, and I think I'll just say a couple of things about that, and I'll let Kelsey transition us again. But we were talking earlier, and I mentioned that your AI today is not the same as your AI 2 months ago, which is not the same as your AI 5 months before that, which is not the same as your AI that was a year before that, right? There are companies like especially Microsoft. I'll just consider them a front runner in some of this, the way they think about things. Copilot is designed to protect your internal data, right? And so if you were saying to your company, let's go ahead and release AI, and you're saying anyone can use AI to start doing research or do this, that, and the other, and they can use any AI to be able to do that, are you protecting your data? Where if you're in the Office 365 environment and you have Copilot, it is protecting your data, even in the free version of it, the one that doesn't have the $30 per user per month licensing on it, that is still broadcasting right on the screen that your data is protected. If you upload a document and there's a business document, it stays protected. I think that's important to be able to say. And so if you are a company that hasn't jumped into AI yet or doesn't have policies around AI, go ahead and get on that, because that's important, because you may have a individual or individuals that are just saying, hey, I recognize that AI helps me. And even though the company doesn't have a policy yet, I've been using ChatGPT, the free version. I've been uploading documents in there. Where is that stuff living? That's important to understand. So it is time now to put your policies out, or at least get some beginning policies out there and get that piece moving. So that's what I would say to companies that are not yet in the AI space. So okay, Kelsey, go ahead and transition us into a different topic here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we could switch back over to a little bit more about automation. So let's talk about how automation reduces friction in finance, HR, operations, and customer engagement.
Awesome. Why don't we go with Katie first?
So one of the ways that we see a large disparity between teams with a lot of different clients is between sales and marketing. Oftentimes you need marketing's information to really guide your sales process, and vice versa. Marketing needs to know what's happening on sales to know, are their marketing messages working, or does something need to be adapted or changed to really make sure that we're targeting the right audience with the right message. On the screen is a example of a visual workflow of the average customer funnel. So awareness, consideration, purpose, retention, referral. You don't really need to read all the tiny text on the page, but really what it's showcasing is that with each stage of the customer funnel, there's different actions that need to be happening both on the marketing and sales side. Whether that's someone fills out a form that pre-qualifies them to funnel into the sales pipeline so that they can follow up with them. There's a bunch of different tasks that if they're all manual, it can be a really large amount of time that your team is taking to really do this process. And so with automation, we've helped sales and marketing teams really connect the dots between those two departments so that they know what each other's doing, but also that there's automation so that not everything's manual. So when someone fills out a form, if they select a certain question or answer a form field a certain way, that will then get them a personalized email. And then from there, it'll notify a sales team member like, hey, this person filled out this form, connect with them and follow up. And then as the sales process moves along through the pipeline, there's also additional marketing communications going out that work in tandem, so that as they're doing follow-up from a call with that person, they might get the latest blog or white paper about a topic like AI that really helps that sales process move along. And so all this to say, AI can really just help that process of easing the communication between two departments like your marketing and sales teams.
Outstanding. So Bert, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and maybe you could talk about it from a different perspective, maybe even disconnected systems.
Yeah, I mean, if you have multiple systems that are disconnected, you have to look at automation and integration to fix that problem. So I'll talk about a space I spend a lot of time in, like I said, manufacturing, dealers, distributors, etc. Building a informational website, a brochure website, is hard enough just to contain information and connect it with other people and share that information with them. Building an e-commerce type website takes things to the next level, and you now have to get pricing and inventory and product information pulled from what's probably 7 or 8 different systems and get them to talk to each other. Katie used the phrase one source of truth on her slide earlier, and that's exactly where you want to be, which just means that information is stored in one place so that it's updated in one place and doesn't produce errors when it's duplicated in different places, and doesn't have to be updated multiple times. So by integrating and connecting the systems, maybe you don't get from 7 sources of truth to 1, but even if you get to 3, it would be a giant step forward. And so you just have to look at the opportunities there and what you can bite off and see what you can take as a first step. But getting those things connected will reduce a lot of the friction you were talking about.
So that's pretty cool. And Bird, you and I, we have discussions all the time, mostly over wings and things like that. But as we were talking, as we've been talking about even earlier this year, but even last year, some of the roadblocks that we see organizations have. One of the conversations we were having was that some organizations get so much information in, they have everything they need to be able to build their system, but the information they get in is like garbage or trash to them, right? So maybe they get in, a PDF that has someone squiggly writing on it, and they can't use that to then get insights off of it because it's someone's handwriting, right? Or they have every order they get in, or every inquiry they get in, all looks different, right? And so they have problems with being able to even look at their own data to mine that information out, put it into something where we could then start reporting or doing analytics off of it and giving them insights back on it. But would you say that with AI being in the picture, with some of the technology changes that have happened on a daily basis, those things that get upgraded, would you say that we're closer now to being able to resolve those types of problems, even if someone's getting documents that has like handwriting on it?
Yeah, whether it's external things like that where notes have been written on it, or even if it's information about their own products that are just stored in a more visual format, like one of the Adobe tools or PowerPoint, or even Word versus an Excel type document that's more database friendly. That data was hard to use a few years ago, and yes, the AI tools are better today than they were, like you said, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, at interpreting that information, pulling usable data out of what looks like a picture of data, and turns it into something usable that can be imported into different systems and complete the data picture they need to do business.
That is awesome. By the way, just as a side note, most of the images that you're looking at inside this slide deck were created by AI. Okay, so thank you, Bird, for that. Tavon, I'm going to kind of bring it over to you to talk about like a more HR related type of view of this, and maybe you could talk about like onboarding processes and things like that we've done.
Sure. So earlier on in this webinar, I kind of gave the example of a HRIS system like Paycor or ADP or any of the other ones sitting out there, and how that can kind of be a place to start a full onboarding process, right? I enter some new employee into the system, maybe it goes out and starts notifying people or gets their account created. I'm going to come back to that example here and just kind of break down a little bit more of what goes into that. But while I'm talking about this, in the back of your minds for everyone out there in the audience, start thinking as well about your own processes and what are those things that are kind of repetitive or manual that maybe don't have to be. So working with this kind of onboarding example again, right? You'll see this all kind of listed out here on the slide, so I won't read it to you one to one. But again, we enter employee data into our HRIS system. Maybe we have some sort of a process that goes out and validates that, and if it finds any errors, we notify, say, HR or whoever actually created that employee entry. But then if everything looks good, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that has to happen, right? We don't just have a employee record sitting there and call it a day. No, we need to actually go out and write their welcome email or get their onboarding packet together. We need to notify, say, IT and facilities and their new manager about some things that they should be doing. We need to make sure that we create the account and assign it the right license and make sure their email address looks good. All these different things we have to kind of do every single time that we hire somebody on. We think those are things that you can probably either automate the entire process or at least make it a more consistent onboarding effort where some of these things don't have to be done repetitively and manually, right? I don't have to have somebody go out and write the welcome email. The system can generate that for me. I don't have to go out and notify IT by hand that we just hired on somebody. We can say, hey, SharePoint or Power Automate or some script, go ahead and send out that notification for me. Go ahead and generate their tasks and their to-do items based on the type of employee that we hired, or notify the right facility manager to get them a access card based on wherever they're actually going to be working as far as their location. Right? There's all these different manual parts of the onboarding process that are really, again, just repetitive things that we shouldn't have to spend our time doing. And we think this is a great example of, again, just a place that you can really start to lean into automation to take some of that repetitive work and let the system help you with it and let the system actually do some of these consistent, easily programmed steps for you.
And I would just add, overall, regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of what the actual thing you're automating is, if you are letting the system do the work, it means the people that you hired have an opportunity to do what you really hired them for, right? The brain power that you hired them for, let them do that work. The part that the AI can't really do, or the part that the automation can't really do, let them do that part and make the company better. I think that's super important to just have out there. So, Kelsey, what else are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, I think we should get into some industry-specific examples from some of the, the areas we've worked with. So manufacturing, agriculture, and healthcare. I know our panel has some good examples of some things that, some ways these can help.
All right, we'll go with Tavon again first to talk about healthcare.
All right, perfect. So one of the industries that we definitely work with and are pretty heavily involved in is, of course, healthcare. So one thing that we find as we work with these larger hospital chains or other large names in the healthcare industry is, for example, we might have SharePoint sitting out there as kind of a place where their data lives, where they go to just do their jobs and interact with people internal to the company. Well, when you get into one of these larger businesses or kind of larger chains, one very frequent need that comes up is different locations, as well as different departments or different projects. They need a place to live in SharePoint. They need a place to live where they can know that the data for that location is secure. That if I work in the Des Moines location, I can't see the data from the Austin, Texas location, for example. I need a place where I can go in and make sure that the people who are on my project or working with me at this location have the right access to what they need, but not more access, and everything is kind of set up consistently and following our best practices. So one thing that we see a lot of these larger healthcare organizations take advantage of is automating part of getting these new SharePoint sites or new pieces of the SharePoint puzzle created, right? My IT department shouldn't have to go out and spend hours setting up a new location site or a new site for a project or a new piece of SharePoint to host a department that we just brought on. Those are things that we can have automatically take place, right? Just by clicking the button or just by entering into a list of locations that we have something new, SharePoint and Power Automate and the automation engine behind the scenes can go ahead and stand up that site for me. It can secure the site. It can make sure that it has the right homepage. It can set the color scheme. It can do all these little steps that, again, I don't want to have my IT people having to take the time to do, because again, it's a very repetitive process that ends up with a site that's set up in a very standard way, right? That's something that we should be able to automate. And we see a lot of these kind of healthcare giants lean into that sort of automation as they get stood up in SharePoint.
So Tavon, could you quickly, I know we had a client also that wanted to be able to take a specific calendar or set of calendars and display them on each of their location sites so that it filtered out and only showed just their pieces of the puzzle. And how did you accomplish that?
Yeah, so that is another great use case where we have some automation living behind the scenes. So not to get technical, but for anyone who's not familiar, SharePoint can have some difficulties plugging in, say, an Outlook calendar onto a page, right? So what we ended up doing for this particular client is we have a workflow, an automation that just monitors that calendar over in Outlook. It says, okay, I created a new event on the Outlook calendar. Let me go ahead and automatically make that in a SharePoint list, which SharePoint has a much easier time displaying on a page. Or I changed that event, gave it a new name or moved it. I'll go ahead and update that same entry over in SharePoint. Or my meeting got canceled, we can go ahead and delete it from the SharePoint side as well.
So that's awesome. That's pretty cool stuff. Okay, so Bird, I'm going to turn it over to you, and maybe you could talk about examples in the ag or manufacturing industry.
Yeah. So I'd mentioned a couple times already some examples of an ag and manufacturing business that would want to maybe sell parts online or get requests for quote for equipment online, things like that. So the thing I'll add to that is if that was 100 parts, a small amount of parts, you could still look at this and say this is a problem we can manually solve. What this industry and many other industries face is the volume, right? So when you're talking about 100,000 parts or 1,000,000 parts or 1,000,000 products that interact with different parts and knowing which parts go with which piece of equipment, now you've suddenly left the, you could, if you were going to update 100 parts a week or 100 parts a day, even, it would take you years to get all this done. So that's where you have to look at some kind of automation and AI augmentation to come in and solve that problem for you. So when you look at, when these businesses look at the huge opportunity of maybe they've only sold regionally before and now they want to sell nationally or internationally, they have all kinds of concerns of, can I get this data pulled together, and can I deal with pricing in other countries, and can I, all these challenges. But now there's solutions with all these things to research them, to use the tools to solve these problems, to automate tasks, to, like you guys said, take time away from the repetitive manual things and focus on the thinking time and the strategy of entering into these new markets. And then AI also assists in the marketing and digital marketing of attracting people to the website, so that even if you're selling a commodity product, you're found in the search engines above other people, not because you have a better price maybe or even a better product, but just you've done a better job with marketing to get there. So lots of advantages of automation, integration, and AI in the manufacturing space.
Outstanding. And then do you want to pitch in there and talk about any industry specifically, Katie?
Yeah, this really speaks to any industry with a sales team, or even if you're a nonprofit with a donor development team. Whether you have 3 sales team members or 50, there's oftentimes a lot of actions going on that are just being tracked individually, maybe in Google Docs, Excel spreadsheets, or even handwritten notes. Whereas when you think about it in automation and really getting a system that helps congregate all that information, you really want to see the opportunity of what can we do when we have all of our information in one system. And some of those things look like dashboards to be able to tell, hey, this service that we're selling takes on average this many months to close a deal, or these are our top services, these are our top products. And so all of this information oftentimes exists in like your website or in different systems. And so really bringing those systems together with automation and AI really gives a place to be able to specifically see what's happening internally with your sales team or your donor development team, and help give that team targets to really hit, whether it's specific industries that they're going after, if you're more a B2B model, or top products that they really need to be focusing on. And I think with that piece of having it in kind of a system that gives you dashboards, that gives notifications and tasks and meeting notes, it helps the team work together as a team to know, like, hey, John Smith over here is already working this lead. I don't need to work this one. But then also giving accountability to you as executives to say, hey, how's it going? How's either this individual team performing or how is this individual performing?
So that's amazing from all three of you. And so if I could sum some of that up, like Tavon, your example was more kind of around saving time for individuals. And I think all of you kind of expressed that in some of the examples that we even talked about earlier. And then Bird, yours was all around kind of not being overwhelmed or overwhelming the user or the actual people who are doing the work here, and maybe freeing them up to do other specific things. And I think we've expressed that in several examples today as well. And then Katie, yours was kind of about, tracking tasks and making sure that we're more accurate. And Tavon, I've heard you say things about accuracy of how things get completed and such first, but also being able to have that data in centralized places where we can actually look at it. And so those are all great examples for the entire day of in this webinar. I would like to add one more to that that is very specific to the audience that we have today. So I have C-suite here today. And I think C-suite is very familiar with like their executive assistants and some of the things that they have to do. And so I was honored to speak at the APC conference in Seattle a couple of weeks ago. And I did multiple sessions. One of my sessions was on Copilot. One of them was on Power Automate. So the kind of two things that we're kind of talking about today. And in between, at that first session, I found that the EAs, when they were explaining to me some of the things that were very complicated in their day, what they spent most of their day doing, a lot of it was around scheduling. And they all had a similar problem, trying to find an hour or 30 minutes that's available for their executive plus everyone else that needed to be able to attend this specific meeting, looking across a vast amount of calendars to be able to get that all in sync to be able to schedule a date. And as they tried to use Copilot to do that, they were having problems because Copilot wouldn't show them all the information available. It would only show them things they were connected to. So that was kind of the underlying issue there. And so when they explained it to me, I had time between sessions. So I called back to the team and said, hey, team, can you guys take a look at this problem and come up with a solution for this? And maybe I can present that tomorrow at my Power Automate session. And so they, in a half day, went to work on solving this problem and came up with a solution. And so they used Copilot Agent, which is saying Copilot, but then I'm going to give Copilot intelligent instructions, tell it what it's allowed to do, how it's able to do it, those types of things, and then have it help me get the answers back to the client. So there's still that intelligent conversation, but on the opposite side of that, we are focusing Copilot on what we want it to be able to see correctly. And so I mentioned this example because they came up with a solution, but they did it in a matter of hours. And so they took a very, very real world problem and solved it in a matter of hours. And I was able to announce this the next day at my presentation and show them all how this was done. And then we made a video afterwards and we're sending out to everybody and things like that. But still, a couple of hours versus months to solve this solution. That is what the power of AI did for us and the power of automation did for us all together. And I think that's significant to say, and I thought that might be a little bit more relevant for the people that are here today listening to this webinar. So, all right, Kelsey, take us down the road.
Awesome, perfect. Okay, I think one of the last things you should throw over to the panel is talk about a practical roadmap for modernizing your enterprise without disruption.
Awesome. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we want to make sure we get to some questions and things like that. So panelists, try to keep your questions a little bit shorter if you can. So Bird, why do you think that people have an issue with change? So we talk to clients all the time, and we end up in a place where they're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm ready for AI yet, or I'm not sure if we're ready to make this change yet, or I just have problems getting into just the change piece of it alone, not even the technology, I don't think, but just the change piece of it as it is. So why do you think that companies have problems, or what are some of the things that you hear them say about why they can't change right now?
Sure. I think the biggest one probably is they don't even know what's possible, and that's what we hope webinars like this are, helping alleviate. But They don't even know what's possible. I think they think it's too much work, it's too much time, it's too much money. I think sometimes in this case, great is the enemy of good, that they think if they can't solve all of the problem, they don't even want to take a bite of it. And, emotionally change is hard.
Awesome. All right. So Tavon, I'm going to have you jump in there as well. And Bird, I'm going to recognize though that some of the things you were talking about are super important, right? And we're going to see, like, do we have any ways to be able to handle some of these things? So Tavon, let's go ahead and talk maybe about, do they have problems accepting like new technology?
Sure. So I think from my perspective, one of the biggest things that I see is there's a need for strategy, right? When we're talking about changing how we operate as a business, we need to make sure that we have a plan in place for that. You mentioned the word governance earlier, and how in any of our other webinars, it's something that we mention all the time, is having the rules and the plan and the direction we're going as an organization. We call that governance. I think that also really applies to AI and to adopting automation and leaning into some of these things we talked about today. Is what'll help you get away from all those problems or things that you're worried about as a business is just taking a step back before we start turning on AI, sitting down to come up with the plan, the rules, what's acceptable, and how do we want it to work for us.
Awesome. Katie, weigh in on like the process for change and things that people should be aware of.
With any big change, it can be overwhelming, but I think with this topic specifically, where you can get started is a few different ways. I think one of the first ways or easiest paths to it is there has to be at least one, maybe two people in your organization that are what we would call early adopters. They're really excited about change. They might be very tech savvy. Really look to those people to kind of be your beta test for some of these AI processes. Maybe they can go off and do some research for their team or department to really see, how can I be using AI to change my daily process? And once you kind of have one person, it really becomes a domino effect. Then the other ways that I would recommend is also look at your teams to see, where are the biggest hangups? Where are the biggest bottlenecks? Is it in operations? Is it in your sales team? Is it in your marketing team? And really see, could you highlight one team to kind of take on that initiative as well, as a process of streamlining your efforts and initiatives. And then the third way is, if you're like, hey, we have bottlenecks across the board on all of our departments, we at Spindustry do several different types of audits that really can help you shape what needs to be your most critical, highest priority items, whether it's on AI specifically, data governance, or even streamlining that tech stack, as we talked about earlier.
Those are awesome answers from all three of you. Oh man, I could sit here and talk about this topic for a really long time, for at least an hour. So I actually did that with our friends from WordPress. We did a webinar strictly on change, and there are amazing topics in there. And one of the things that it helped us realize when we became a partner and started talking to kind of WordPress, as we started talking to them, we kind of realized that even as we were approaching change, we do that through governance. And as we were approaching change, a lot of times we would talk about it from the aspect of, we have to protect the company first, then we'll make it comfortable for everybody else. Because if the company's not here in the future because we didn't have all these things organized, that's a problem for everybody, right? So protect the company first, and then let's make it easy for the user. But we didn't really hone in on that make it easy for the user piece. And then what WordPress kind of showed us, or what you'll see inside this webinar, I should say, is an approach that's really kind of revolutionary. It tells you, let's look at the end user and see the stages of grief, that's what I like to call it, the stages of grief they go through when they're dealing with change. This webinar points all that out for you, and it's a great listen. It takes about, like I said, an hour. Also, if you are interested in the previous webinar that we did, Unlocking Business Value with SharePoint and Microsoft 365, we also talk about the strategy piece of that inside of there, and how what is the way that we're thinking today inside of our industry. So I know we have some minutes left here, and I would love for the panel to just answer. I'm going to give you each 2 questions. I'll let you all answer the first question first, and then we'll go through and do the second question. And then on the second question, Kelsey, I kind of even want you to weigh in on that second question. But here's the first question. What can everyone here try within the next 30 days that will put them on the road to either AI, automation, or integrating systems? Bird, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, I think the simplest one that I would say is if you haven't started using some of the AI search tools like the Copilot, ChatGPT, Google Summaries, and all that stuff, like I would start doing that. Look up your own business, look up your competitors, see if you come up. And again, if you need help with an audit in that area, we can do that. But I really think in the next 30-day scenario, that's if you haven't done that, that's something I would try.
Awesome. Katie, go.
I would say identify your beta testers, your new early adopters, whether that be someone that's a team lead or really look at your individual contributors. Those people might have more time than some of your team leads to really look into how can AI really adapt and change their department or team. And then they're the ones that are doing the research, and then they can bring it back to you to kind of approve and see what you want to implement company-wide.
All right. And Tavon, go.
All right. I would say, kind of going back with the idea of automation helping you make your processes better and letting people really do the job that you hired them for, just take a step back in the next 30 days here and think about your processes. What are those things that you shouldn't have to do, or those pieces of the puzzle that are so repetitive and you just know there's got to be a better way? If you can start identifying those, you're well on the road to automation and increased efficiency.
And since that was your answer, Tavon, I'll just add on to that and say, once you've done that, pick one item and start working on that one item that you want to turn into automation. Let's see how that goes, right? I think that would be a good way to go. All right, thank you for those answers. And now I'm going to come back to you and just ask you to kind of summarize what you want to tell us about either AI integration or integrated systems or automation. Just whatever you want to talk about, this is your free time. So I'm going to start off again with Bird.
Yeah, thanks for listening today. I think it's like we've said it a couple times, but just take that first step. Don't get scared by the big picture. Try something. It's an area you have to focus on and get your toes dipped into and try something. So I would, like I said, find something. What you said in the next 30 days is a good thing. Like, what can I try to take that first step and change something? I would do that. Don't be scared of it. Look at how you can look at the data that you already have trapped in disparate systems. Use some connectivity to get those brought back together so you can use that information for the power that it should be used for and get started. And yeah, that's where I leave it.
All right. And then Katie, give me your closing thoughts.
I would just say review not only your internal processes, but your external. Take a look at your website. Do you have things like FAQs that are going to answer some of the ways that AI has changed search engines? Do you have pertinent information that really is going to resonate with how audiences are interacting with your website, your social media, your paid ads, and really taking a look at what you're already doing and seeing how minute changes can really improve those efforts.
And Katie, I'm still going to say that what you brought up about, this whole change in how search engines work and how they're just giving you the answers and people are never making it to the website, that still just right in my brain because it snuck up on the world and it was just like, here, oh, guess what? This is the way it's happening now, and no one knew. And that is just sticks right in the front of my mind every single day. Every time I go and do a search, I'm like, oh, these poor people, we're not making it to their website. I'm just going to stop right here. So thank you for that, Katie. And Bird and Katie, it's been wonderful actually having you here in this webinar. Now I'm going to move over to Tavon. Tavon, give me your closing thoughts.
All right. I think I would just say, broadly speaking, every business in every industry can benefit from either AI or automation or trying to integrate systems and tying things together. So like I was saying with the next 30 days, right? Just take that step back and think about what is one small piece of the puzzle that you can just make better. Think about it from that kind of almost selfish perspective. What do you have to do in the day you don't want to have to do? And see how much better we can make your life at work.
All right. And Kelsey, would you like to jump in and give us any closing thoughts?
I would love to. Thank you, Jared. I think that what I'll say is we've had these words up on almost every slide, but we talk about ROI, ease of use, standardization, saving time in the workday, capturing processes in the system. All of these things are benefits that you can get from automation and AI. You just have to, like everyone's been saying, take the steps, try it. You'll see those benefits pretty quickly.
That is awesome. That's actually a great reminder. That's a great point. Thank you, Kelsey. Yeah, we put it out on every slide, so just keep it in front of you, but that's 100% right. So I'll give my closing thought, which is actually a little bit different than everybody else's closing thoughts, right? I actually thought you guys were going to talk about all kinds of weird things, but you talked about reasonable things. So I'll talk about the weird thing. So I think people have trouble recognizing sometimes what they can use AI or intelligent AI or even automation for. And so I'm going to give you kind of what I see as the AI pattern. And this is not all of the pattern, but this is just one pattern for it. And if you can identify this in your environment, you may have a need for AI or intelligent AI or automated AI, if you will, agents to be able to help you in your environment. And so I like to look at it like this. First, in the pattern, something happens. So there has to be a trigger. And that could be someone entered something on your website, someone did a specific type of search on your website, someone went to a particular, did a search and they couldn't find anything on your website, like no results came up. Or it could be that someone asked a question internally, whatever that is, some trigger happens, right? And then there's a bunch of manual work that has to be done to compensate for whatever that trigger was. So for example, if no search results were found on the website, oh, should that be something that's on our website? Can we do the research? What is the material we need to have up there? Can we get the marketing team involved? How about the sales team involved? Can we get that information up to our website, right? Here's all the information. Someone has to do all that manually, okay? And then the end result is that the last part of that pattern is we fix it. So we put it up on the website or something like that. That is a part where AI can play a huge role in. So the same trigger is going to happen. Someone entered something into my website and then nothing came back as a search result inside of my website. I don't have that product that they're looking for, or I don't have that particular thing that they're looking for, or maybe I do and it's just not in the right place, whatever that may be. Then the AI could take over and do all the research. What is the product they're looking for? What are the pieces of the puzzle? Do we offer that? Can I get the material made up for that? Let me go ahead and get that material and have it in a place for my salesperson or marketing team to review when they get here in the morning. So now it's all that legwork is done. That's the AI doing that really essential piece in the middle for you. And then from there, we move on. So those are just things that I feel like might be important as just a pattern. So that's where we are. And then we're going to go here and just say, hey, these are the things that we talked about today. We talked about how to unify your internal systems, websites, and data into a single intelligent ecosystem. We talked about how AI can surface insights and automate decisions across your organization. We also talked about how automation reduces friction in finance, HR, operations, and even in customer engagement. We also took a look at some examples of industry-specific items for manufacturing, architect, or agricultural, and even healthcare. We also took a practical look at what's the roadmap for how do I get through this change piece if that's a roadblock for me. What's the roadmap for getting through that piece of the puzzle without actually having any disruption inside of the way that we work currently? So I want to thank the panelists for being here. I really appreciate you guys' time. I know that all of you have super busy schedules, and I just want to thank you for being here with us as we go through. And then Kelsey, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome, thank you. We know we're at time, so if you do have to leave, that is a-okay. You'll get the link to this recording and the slides, but we do have a couple of questions here I figured would be good for everyone to hear. So the first one is, they said that Katie mentioned an audit. They were hoping we could go a little bit more into detail about what an audit is and how that could be helpful to a business.
Yeah, so at Spindustry, we have a couple different audits that we do with clients. One of our newer ones is an AI audit, which is actually going over a lot of what I was talking about on how search engine results have changed. And so this takes a look at your website to see how is your content positioned and where do you need changes, whether it's on the external, on how things are worded, or some things that are more internal behind the scenes, like structured data and schema markup that help the search engines crawl your site to get those results. And then we have a few different audits that look kind of holistically at your tech stack, your website, your CRM, your marketing initiatives to really give you recommendations on where there might be some things that have critical issues, or where there's just some areas that could use improvements, like branding consistency, or your messaging may be different on your website from your social media, or some of the things that we talked about earlier on tech stack disparity and not having those things connected, and where there could be opportunities for integration. And then I'll hand it over to Tavon or Jared on the data governance, where they do an audit to look at those items.
So I'll go ahead and take that, and then Tavon, you can weigh in if you like. So we do governance for organizations all the time, and that is a holistic view of how you're using Office 365 or SharePoint or any of the pieces that are in that puzzle, Teams, to make sure that we have a good plan for how that system is going to serve you for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Not how Microsoft says it should be used, but how it works best for your organization, from the bottom line of the structure to what are the settings set for, all those different things. But what it helps you do actually is, and what we've heard people or heard companies kind of give us feedback on, is it not only helped them with the SharePoint governance piece of it or the Office 365 governance piece of it, but it also forced them to look at just processes and how they're doing certain things internally and how it all fits together. And they usually have that same governance committee actually talk about some of those things. It's a side effect, and it's just going to happen as you go through those particular processes. But that's one of the things that we do.
Awesome. Okay, and then I think we have time for one more question, especially because I think this one will give everyone some good information. They wanted us to address some of the major differences between the licensed Copilot and then the free version of Copilot, and if there's any security concerns between the two.
Tavon, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. So the major difference between licensed and free Copilot has to do with whether it can actually see your business data, right? So for anyone not aware, there is a baked into the Microsoft 365 platform version of Copilot that has the ability to look at your SharePoint sites or your OneDrive or your calendar or your email, all these different places where you might have data living in the Microsoft environment. That is the kind of licensed version. It's at about $30 per user per month, I think is the current price. However, you also do have, whether you're licensed or not, the kind of free version of Copilot. Everybody in the world can use free Copilot, but if we use it from the perspective of somebody who's logged into a Microsoft environment, not the one that's just sitting out there on the web, but the one sitting here in your kind of Microsoft suite, it will still be protecting you. Right? You can upload a document to it and have it process it. You can talk to it about whatever you want, and it's going to have that little kind of shield icon in the top right that tells you, hey, we are protecting your data. Everything that you're talking to the AI about here is confidential and not being used to train the AI. Whereas if you went out to just say, web Copilot, not logged in, it is going to, do as AI products do and try to learn from that interaction.
So, and I'll just to add a visual to that. Here, I'm inside of Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is just an area inside of the environment. And here I have the work version, meaning I have a paid license and I'm paying they're paying $30 per user per month for me. And inside of it, that shield that we see over here is saying, hey, this is Microsoft's Enterprise Data Protection Agreement. They're very transparent on what is protected and what is not, and all the different ways that they're helping you keep your data safe. And so because I have this work license, I asked a question that it could look at all my internal stuff, and it did. This work version will also, if it needs to, go out and look at the web for stuff as well and give me those results. So it'll say, like, from the web, I found this, from your internal documents, I found this, right? And that's fine. But it also ties in all the rest of the systems in here as well, like the sensitivity of documents. It found some information that was marked as sensitive. So it's telling me in Copilot, the results that I gave you are now classified as sensitive as well. If I was in the web version of that, which is all your users inside of your environment have access to this as long as your IT just turned it on for them, right? So they all can get to this. It is also protected. That's what Tavon was talking about in the shield. And so even if I was to upload a document inside of here, so first of all, if I search for the same thing, it's not going to find any of my internal documents. It does not look internally when I'm using just this version of it. But if I upload a document, and here's the important part, if I was to upload a document here, that document gets put inside of the OneDrive of that user and is held there still protected, right? So they don't take it outside of the Microsoft realm, and it's not being, training data for any other AIs that might be out there and so forth. So you do get that same level of service kind of when you're using some of the paid versions of some of those AIs that are out there, but their free versions don't offer you this protection, and you're already paying for this inside the Microsoft environment. You're getting that extra protection for free. So hopefully that answers the question in kind of a good way.
Awesome. Okay, well, we will probably call it there since we are past time. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Like I said, you will get the slides and a link to the recording as well shortly after. So thank you
All
so
right.
much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, panel.
Thank you.